Hey everyone from the farm, it's Bree here at Blossom and Branch. It is end of December and we are getting ready to do some seed things in the greenhouse and here in the field. So I thought I'd take you along for a little behind the scenes tour. I'm going to be doing some direct seeding. So this is the time of year right now, the top inch or so of the ground is thawed because we had a nice couple days of 50, almost 60 degrees. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to direct seed a couple things into this slightly thawed topsoil before our next snow. So that snow is going to help really get it worked down in there. So first I'm just kind of evening off this top layer here of the soil, and then we are going to seed right into that. The two things that I like to direct seed, especially in winter, or you can even direct seed these in fall. So I like to do larkspur, and I am also doing bupleurum, which is a good filler flower for especially early spring. It lasts a really long time in the vase, and it's also really interesting when dried. Whenever I'm direct seeding, I overseed, so I put in more than I think I will need, just because that's kind of how it works, is not all of them are going to survive or germinate. So I'm going to do a spacing. Now I just happen to know that my drip emitters here have a 6-inch spacing, which is about what I want for these plants. So I'm just going to kind of follow the emitters here on my drip line and space my plants accordingly. And now I'm just going to press it down lightly just to make sure there's good soil adhesion. And we are coming into snowfall tomorrow, so this is perfect timing for direct seeding. Now for the larkspur. And larkspur actually need darkness to germinate, so where the bupleurum I just basically surface sowed and I didn't really cover back up, the larkspur needs to be buried about 1/4 of an inch under the surface of the soil. So we're going to do that so that we can hopefully get some good germination. I'm heading out now with the bag. I'm going to collect the seeds from my northern sea oats, which is one of my favorite native grasses here in North America. It's beautiful for arranging, and it's also one of the few native grasses that does well in both shade and sun. And so it's great if you have a shady spot that you want to grow some native grasses in. So we're gonna just grab some seeds, and I'm also gonna grab some seeds, hopefully from my big blue stem, because I want to start some more of those. Right, here is the beautiful northern sea oats. You can see it's still standing tall after getting lots of snow. And there's a couple ways that you can propagate these. You can either dig them up and divide them in the spring, which is something you can do when they get a little bit bigger, or you can save these seed heads, and you can see how beautiful these seed heads are. They just have this like shimmery, beautiful quality. So we're gonna go ahead and save some of those and start them and place them in some other areas around the farm. So you can see we got a pretty good bag full of seeds. We're gonna leave the rest for the birds to nibble on. But these guys are gonna make some great new patches. Some of this we're gonna direct seed, but I'm gonna start a lot of it inside just because I wanna make sure that it germinates. So I'm saving some of the blue stem, and I'm also going to save some of our prairie drop seed, because those are ones that I found have done really well here, especially with our drought. And so we're saving those seeds, so we're going to continue to plant those throughout the property. So the last thing that we're going to be saving seeds from today is this echinacea, and I love echinacea for a cut garden. You can see these are really easy to harvest the seeds from, so especially after these are dried out, you just kind of pull aside these little spiky parts, and right in there are these seeds for the echinacea. You can see one right there, kind of close to my finger. That's what the seeds look like. So you can save these, you can pull them apart. If you want to save time, you can just do this. If you want to kind of spread some echinacea around your garden, this is a really easy way to do it. Just dig a hole, little hole, pop off a head, and put it in the ground. Done. So it is the day after Christmas. It's end of December, early January, and I call this kind of my first flush of seed starting. So I kind of do a couple different rounds of seed starting. One is around this time of year, and this is for the things that take a long time to start. So I'm just gonna kind of start going through all of the things that I'm starting right now to get you excited about the seed starting season, and to also get you thinking about some things that you should be starting right now too. So one of the things that we're starting now are our native plants, and we're starting these native plants now because they tend to take longer to germinate, or they need cold stratification, which is a period of moist, cold time. Usually we put them in the freezer. You could also put them outside if you get cold enough, consistent temperatures. We like to start them in the freezer because it just gives us a little more control. Our temperature fluctuates a lot in the winter time, especially this time of year. So by putting them in the freezer, I know that they're getting the cold temperatures that they need to start. So some of the ones that we're starting right now are things like milkweed, penstemons, which take a really long cold stratification period, hyssop, we're starting coreopsis. Our echinaceas require a really long cold stratification, so 30 to 90 days I find, and then they're also really slow to germinate, so we're starting our echinacea. We're starting some other natives. We're thinking about starting some other natives like black-eyed Susans, and then we're also starting perennials that tend to take a little bit longer, like salvias, and also perennial herbs like rosemary, because those tend to take longer. Lavender is another seed that I tend to start this time of year, again because they're slower germinating and they tend to grow a little bit slower if they're a perennial plant. So those are some of the things that I'm starting right now. And then the other thing that we are starting right now because we grow cut flowers here, we're growing a lot of our cut flowers and we're starting them now. So the other ones that we're starting are all of our lisianthus. If you want to learn how to grow lisianthus, these are one of my favorite seeds to grow. They look kind of like a hybrid of a rose and a tulip, and they have an amazing vase life. 2 to 3 weeks in the vase is how long they last, so really, really incredible. Now, lisianthus are native to my state, to Colorado, but these are all cultivars and they take a little bit more coddling to grow. So if you want to learn more about how to grow lisianthus, pop over to the video on how to do that. We have the whole thing from seed to bloom. But for now, what you need to know is that we start them really early. So actually, I've already started a round of lisianthus, and we have around 1,200, oh, that stalk. We have that growing too. But we have about 1,200 lisianthus. You can barely, I don't think you can even see them yet. They're so tiny. But we have about 1,200 of them going now. We're going to start about that many in our second batch. And then we plant them out about 6 weeks before last frost. So they are a cold lover, and we do start them early. They're also really, really slow growing. So we're starting those now. The other ones we're starting, I just gave you a little sneak peek, but we are starting our stock plants. And stock are an amazing cut flower because they have a really great scent to them. You can see they are actually a pretty quick grower. And for me in my zone, I find that stock requires a period of growing under cover. So they like to be planted really early, and once the temperatures hit around 75 to 80 degrees, they tend to peter out because they don't like the heat. So this is why we're starting them really early, and we're gonna plant these into a low tunnel, a covered tunnel, and we have some videos on how to do a low tunnel, but I just find if we don't plant them into a tunnel way before last frost, they just don't bloom for me. So these guys we're probably gonna plant out in around March, and they will bloom for us around mid-May. The other ones that we're starting are violas, And if you haven't grown violas, I really love to grow them. There are a couple tricks when it comes to growing them as a cut flower. Some of those include spacing them really tightly together and also giving them a little bit of dappled shade, because that helps them grow taller so you can cut from them. But I do love to grow them. They do really tolerate cold well. So again, this is another one that we're starting here in late December, early January, and we will plant these in early March. That takes us through the last one that I wanted to show you that we're going to be starting today, which are our sweet peas. Sweet peas are one that we grow cold, so they grow a little bit slower than if we were growing them in a 70-degree room temperature environment. We actually grow these down to around freezing at night, and we grow them in the mid-50s, maybe 60s, whatever the air temperature is in the winter during the day. So we do give them a little bit of protection in the evening. We don't want them to drop below, I don't like them to get below 20, 22 degrees, but they can tolerate down to those temperatures. So we grow them cold, which means they grow a little bit slower. And everything that I've already mentioned, we grow in soil blocks, and we do occasionally start our sweet peas in soil blocks too. But this year we're actually going to be growing our sweet peas in these trays, and these are from Epic Gardening. I like to hit them because I like to show how sturdy they are. These are not, you can't squish them, okay, you can't break them. The reason that we're going to be growing in these this year is I had a little bit of an issue last year with my sweet peas, and they grew incredible roots, and they started to grow into each other. And that root disturbance can sometimes be a problem when we're looking at sweet peas. So sweet peas really don't like to be disturbed, to have their roots jostled when they're being planted. So our thought is with these trays, and these are from Epic Gardening, we'll link them below. Our thought is that these are going to be better for the sweet peas because they're a nice deep tray, and sweet peas like a deep tap root, so they like to have a nice long place to spread out their roots. And then they also have these little slits on the side which allow for what's called air pruning. Same idea as in soil blocking. It's going to prevent the roots from doing this within the tray where they start to circle and circle and circle. Once they hit this little slit of air, they stop, and that just produces more roots instead of circling roots. The other thing I like about these is they have this little hole on the bottom, so we can just pop our finger through, and that will pop out the seedling once we're ready to plant, thus reducing the amount of root disturbance. So we're going to be growing our sweet peas in these this year, and everything else we're going to start into soil blocks. Okay, so I have all of my seeds in the freezer that need to be cold stratified, so you put them all into Ziploc baggies and into a cold freezer to cold stratify. So those are things like the natives, the perennials that need a little bit longer cold stratification. Those guys are all in the freezer, so we do start those in mid to late December. All right, so next up I am starting some stock, and stock is a cold loving plant, so I'm doing a couple successions of stock so that hopefully it doesn't all bloom at the same time, which often happens with this one in particular. And we start a lot of stock because stock flowers only usually put out, at least for the variety that we grow, which is the iron variety of stock. And stock only puts out one flower per plant. So it doesn't need pinching. You don't want to pinch it because if you pinch it, you're going to remove the flower. So it's one that we have to start quite a bit of because only one flower per plant. So if we want to get a decent harvest, I'm usually starting around 1,000 to 1,500 stock plants, because the other piece of growing stock is that not all of them are going to be the double ruffle blooms that everyone thinks of when they think of stock traditionally. Some of them will be single blooms, and if they're single blooms, that means they're not going to have the same look as stock, and that means they don't get the same value. We don't get the same dollar value out of those ones that are the singles. So we want to make sure we grow enough that we have a pretty good percentage and amount of doubles to sell. Some people will select out or try to select out from the seedlings which ones are going to be the doubles. So usually you can tell by the shape of the seedling and the coloring of the seedling. The darker green ones tend to be the doubles and the lighter green ones tend to be the singles, but it's really time consuming to do that, and so we don't So, and it's not always accurate. So that's why we don't select out for doubles. So I just start a lot, which is where slow blocking really comes in handy. This tray holds 320 mini blocks. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed that little sneak peek into what we're doing here at the farm in end of December, early January. It's a lot of seed saving. We're starting to do our cold stratification, and we're also doing some direct sowing when we can. Alright guys, be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed seeing what we're doing behind the scenes here at the farm.